Oh, g'day. I'm Stu Mack, and we're talking about change, fitness, and the stages of change. So let's dive into it. So far, we've looked at contemplation or pre-contemplation, stage of change, contemplation. We've looked at preparation, and last time we looked at action. That leads us direct into maintenance. Now, maintenance is the most frustrating stage for most people. I have two stages that I wrestle with anytime I'm contemplating a big change or a significant change, a meaningful change. One is the preparation. I get overwhelmed with the preparation, and that leads me to being overwhelmed with taking action because I feel like I haven't prepared enough. And another area is maintenance. I begin the change process and then I don't sustain it, and that's pretty tough. And that undermines your confidence. It undermines your self belief. It undermines the probability that you'll embark on a new change in the future, that you'll change the status quo of your life. You run the risk, if you keep falling out in the maintenance stage, you run the risk of not having successful changes in your life and telling the story of failure. And that might not be an accurate story of your life, but it's the story you begin to tell. Because the reality is that we sustain change in many areas of our life. We just can't always see it. And so what we see are the areas where we don't maintain change. So this maintenance stage of change is the one that helps transition you from a person who is beginning the process of change into a person who has managed to sustain the change for the long term, and it's become a habit. And we hear all these things, practice a habit for 148,000 million days and it'll become permanent. 28 days of practicing something and it becomes a habit. Or, practicing a skill 10,000 times gains mastery of it. That's a load of crap. That's rubbish. Those things are really nice, but they're not true. They're not real. Humans are far more complex than that. Learning motor skills is far more complex and also far more simple than that. That's a discussion for another day about mastery of motor skills. But what I want to say is changing a habit, changing a behavior, maintaining it. It's not about doing it for 28 days. There's other processes and things that have to go inside your brain. There's other checks and balances you have to have in place. For example, you made the firm decision to change, and so you began the change process. Pat yourself on the back for that. But then what happens when the challenges come up? And they will come up. There will be speed bumps along the way. When you were in the preparation stage, what you did was a cost-benefit analysis. You did a cost-benefit analysis of staying the same and a cost-benefit analysis of maintaining the change. So if I don't change, what are the costs of that and what are the benefits? If I do change, what are the costs of that and what are the benefits? When things get tough, you revisit all of that preparation you did. You revisit your contemplation and your preparation stuff, the things that led you to make the firm decision to change, because those are the things that drove you in the first place. When things get tough, you revisit what are the benefits for this change and what are the costs? What are the benefits for not changing and what are the costs? And the reality is that sometimes you have to say, well, this change, now is not the time to sustain this change. I can't keep it. But other times you have to say, well, no, this is a good time to keep going. I never forget with my first Pilates studio, I was in a particular shopping strip. I was not a great businessman. Marketing stuff wasn't a strength of mine. Advertising, I didn't have capital behind me to do it. And I had a bunch of mental health issues that were getting in the way of my ability to sustain a business like that. And the demographic of where I was located was just a terrible place for what I was trying to achieve. So my accountant at the time, he said to me one tax time, he said, Stuart, you have to get out of this place or you're going to go bankrupt in like 2 years' time. Okay. So we got out, stopped trying to run the business. Now, that ended up having a bunch of other issues for me. I really wanted that business to run. I really wanted it to work, but we just couldn't sustain it. And financially, that created a massive burden for us. And financially, I couldn't end the lease, but I couldn't keep running the business. So we ended up paying out the lease and our mortgage for 6 months. So we had a house mortgage and we had the lease. So it was effectively two mortgages that we were paying off, and we didn't have the funds for that. And that led to a bunch of stress. If I hadn't have done a cost to benefit analysis, I wouldn't have been able to make that decision to get out. It was a tough decision because I really loved having a studio. A little while later, I was able to get another studio that was smaller and served my purposes. You see, what had happened was I went through the first studio, which was larger space. I couldn't sustain it financially, but that helped me, that what you might call a failure of that business, that helped me refine and understand what I wanted in my next space. So that when I found the next space, it was much smaller. I created a boutique training space with some unique equipment that wasn't anywhere else in Melbourne at the time. And I was able to create a beautiful little atmosphere and a little community kind of space. If I had not have had my first studio and had the supposed failure of that, if I hadn't have had the guts to take that action and realize that I couldn't maintain that space, then that meant that I wouldn't have learned that in the next iteration of my studio, I wanted it to look like X, Y, Z. And that lesson, because I did the cost-benefit analysis in preparation, enabled me to be more successful in the second studio space and to enjoy that space much better. So that process of preparation is so important for maintenance. And that's why we talk about preparation before we talk about maintenance. Once you get against roadblocks to change, you need to have reasons to keep going. You need to know that you've resourced yourself, that you've got all the resources you need, or you know how to access those resources in order to keep the change going, because it's going to get hard. Maintenance is the toughest part of change. It's where most relapse occurs, and we just got to keep trying, and you've got to have that preparation in place so that you can keep maintaining it. So when it gets tough, you remember the benefits and you assess, are those benefits still valuable to me, or do I have other benefits that I need to address? So maintenance. The final one we look at is the termination stage of change. This is Stu Mack signing off. If you like the post, please like it. If you want to subscribe, I invite you to subscribe and get more content that will be coming your way sometime. Bye now.